All right, Coach, let's go back a little bit. I heard that you grew up in a town of a grand total of maybe 5,000 people. You describe it as living down a gravel road. But how has being from Richmond basically made you the person that you are today?
Yeah, it's a great hometown. It was, a place where you know everybody, right? One of those feelings where there isn't really anybody that you're going to bump into that you're not familiar with them, familiar with their kids, their parents. So it really just gave that community feel, and a place that you cheer for everybody that's from that hometown.
And Dad or Grandpa had a farm?
Yeah,
Or did you do any work on the farm?
Oh yeah. He had cattle, not a ton of cattle, but he had cattle. So we'd feed the cattle. We'd do all types of chores around the farm. So my parents were both teachers, and they taught in Kansas City, so they drive every day to Kansas City. But they wanted us in that environment where we could kind of grow up in Richmond.
And high school, you were the class president.
Yeah, I should have thought about that a little bit more before I signed up for it, because now I'm doing like reunions, and we're coming up on 20th this summer.
What are you gonna do?
Hometown pizza. They're in town. We just kind of all get together, fellowship, have some beverages, and tell stories. So it should be fun. It's always fun to get around the people in the class.
Okay, so no matter what role you have in football, you're still class president and finding ways to make sure the reunions are coming together?
Yeah, you still got to wear that hat. So I'm excited about it. I'm glad people are flexible. I got some early questions like, why are we doing the reunion in the summer and not during football season? I'm like, well, I got this little thing going on, during football season. Yeah. So I hope it works out for everybody.
No big deal, just trying to win some championships,
That's it.
but we can get pizza later.
That's it, yeah.
Take me back to college for you and playing linebacker at William Jewell. What was the goal? What kind of player were you? Like, what do you remember about your playing days?
Oh, man. I just love football. I was the guy that, enjoyed practice, enjoyed games, but I enjoyed practice, just as much. Loved going to work. I'd say I was a little bit crazy. Early on in my career, I'm the guy running down on kickoff, trying to create an explosion. Played with some great effort, and I actually played probably exactly where I was supposed to play. William Jewell was perfect for me. Had an awesome experience. Got lifelong friends from that place, and really fun opportunity to grow, as a young man.
What does the word loaf mean to you in the context of William Jewell?
So you already know the story, obviously. So, all right, well, I'll tell this story. It's kind of an embarrassing story, but Coach Litteris was our defensive coordinator, and you get a production grade after each game. And after a game, I'd gotten 2 loafs, and it means you're not running to the ball the way you're supposed to. You're not playing with relentless effort. So after that game, I was so frustrated just because effort, it kind of mattered to me. And I had my wrist tape, and I'd written on my tape, loaf, remind yourself, don't finish any play without finishing the play. Well, that led to us playing Avila. We're kind of ahead in the game, and the ball is going away from me. I'm chasing the ball. Clayton Hewitt comes up and makes the tackle, but I'm already midair. And my best friend, Logan Minnick's on the other side of the huddle, and I'm still flying, and I break his leg. So he flies in the air. His leg, you could see it break. It was a solid break. And what's crazier is we had a wedding that day that we were both supposed to be in, so Logan didn't make the wedding. But yeah, loaf means something to me. You got to give great effort.
But it seems like even from the beginning, there's a lot of ways that you motivate your team. And we see that constantly, but even a word like loaf you used as a motivator. Have you always been someone who's intrinsically motivated or finding things to push yourself even more?
Yeah, I think so. I think it just kind of happens on accident, right? Everybody wants to be the best version of themselves, and some people do that with their hand out. Other people go in and they go take it, right? And I've always felt like I want to be the person that goes and takes opportunity, takes advantage of when there are opportunities, and kind of always chased it.
Where did the habit of writing goals on the mirror start for you?
It probably started when I was working for Todd Graham. He talked, a lot about goals, and that really started for me at Arizona State, where I'd start, and I still do it today. You'll take a dry erase marker and put your goals on your mirror and adapt and change what those are.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are the goals right now?
Number one goal is help my people reach their dreams and goals and aspirations. I feel like I'm living my dream every day. So the number one goal in there is, that to help the other people in the organization, the players that come play for me, get to live their dream, because I'm living mine. Number 2, want to win a national championship here at Oregon. Number 3 is Mike Bellotti's the winningest coach in Oregon football history. He's won 116 games, right? I'm a long ways away, so I'm chasing that.
Okay, so flash forward to you coaching at Georgia, and your defense gives up 127 rushing yards, and you decide that they should wear a T-shirt that says 127 so that they know that I guess that's not okay. Is that another motivating factor? Walk me through the decision to create these t-shirts.
Well, you're always trying to find ways to make your team play better, right? And I would credit that as much to our staff as anybody. But when something went wrong, like that was something that Kirby was really good at. Like, okay, how are we going to make sure this never happens again? And it means it has to be on the front of everybody's mind. So, we're holding up a sign during team run that tells how many yards are there. All the coaches are wearing a shirt that says, how many yards we gave up. And I think that's a constant reminder to our players, like there's a standard of play that we want to accomplish, and we actually did the same thing here last year. Oregon State, the year before, it ran for a lot of yards against us, and we wanted to make sure we reminded those guys every single day of what that looked like.
Mm-hmm. There's a weird balance that I think you have to strike as a coach that is like, we don't look back too much. We're obviously planning forward, but we don't want it to happen anymore. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I think it's just that. You have to be able to assess your team, and figure out what kind of, what creates confidence in those guys. Not everybody's, it creates confidence with negative, right? Sometimes you have to create confidence with a positive. So that's the challenge for us as coaches, is figure out what's going to motivate these players, right? I had a parent that I was talking to as a recruit, the other day, and we were talking about, his son running track. And he talked, specifically about telling his son, I don't think he can do it. And his wife later on said, I can't believe you're not supporting him, telling him he can do it. And he goes, honey, that's just what I just did by telling him he's not going to be able to do it. Now he's going to be motivated to make it happen. So I think that's the challenge as a coach, is figuring out what's going to motivate your guys to be able to accomplish the goal.
What's the craziest goal you feel like you've crossed off of that list in the mirror?
I don't know about crazy. I mean, well, this is somewhat crazy. Back in 2013, I'm at Arizona State. I actually have a picture of it saved on my phone, but I have my goals on my mirror. And I remember when I got this job, my uncle texted me. He goes, you remember your goals? I remember seeing him when I came and visited you at Arizona State. I'm like, yeah, what about it? He goes, one of your goals is head coach 35. Well, I became the head coach at Oregon at 35 years old. So it's kind of, to me, it's always stuck out as if you put it in front of you, you brush your teeth every single day. Like there's nothing you can't, reach or chase. And really, those goals have changed a lot. Like early in my career, I was really selfish. I was trying to, move and elevate and create. And when my wife got sick, those goals kind of all got reassessed and changed. And it really became a lot more about the people around me rather than myself. I think that's been good for me.
It's interesting because you had a lot of stops. I even went back and I was like, man, how many times was he a graduate assistant? I was like, how many degrees does he have?
So I got one graduate degree from William Woods. Okay. The other ones I was really practicing being a football coach. Wasn't such a good student. So.
Okay, well, it's been very well documented, though, that you did take a 13-hour drive for an opportunity that you did not know whether or not you had. Right. So could you tell the story of how that came about?
Yeah, I wanted to coach college football. I was coaching high school and I enjoyed it, but I'd gotten to where I was sending letters and making phone calls really to anybody in the nation and didn't get a lot of responses. Had finally gotten a call back from a coach that I had met at a clinic, Keith Patterson, and he said, hey, we might have an opportunity for you. I'll call you after signing day. And signing day comes and goes and the phone call never happens. I just remember telling Sophia, I was like, this is the closest I've ever been. I'm not going to live with regret. Like, I got to go see if I can make something happen. So went and taught that day, did weights, and then as soon as school was over, hopped in my car and drove 13 hours to Pittsburgh and changed into a suit right in a gas station right before I get there and kind of hang out for a little while and then find out the coaches aren't even there. They're at Penn State doing a clinic. So stay the night, get to meet with Coach Patterson. My wife's pregnant. She has a 1-year-old at the time. But he's like, yeah, we got a job for you for $800 a month. And I don't think I told him that Sophia was pregnant. I didn't want him to not give me the job, but yeah, ended up taking the job, and it's kind of been, climbing from there.
How did you, a wife, and a soon-to-be kid live off $800 a month?
Yeah, it didn't make a lot of sense. We had, I remember like my first apartment, my family kind of stayed in Kansas City for a little while. My first apartment was off Craigslist, and it was just I rented a 1-bedroom for $100 a month in Southside Pittsburgh. And there was already a bed there, so I didn't have to go get a bed. So who knows what bed I was sleeping on. But I pulled out my teaching retirement. I've been teaching for a little over 2.5 years. That was $18,000. And I remember when we got a house in Pittsburgh, I asked the landlord, "Can I go ahead and pay you 6 months right now?" Just because I'm worried if I have that money in the bank, it's not going to be sitting there. So just, and God always made it happen. Like, we always just had enough. We figured it out.
There were a lot of sacrifices I feel like you have to make to just be in this position. But when I hear your story, that's like a constant.
Yeah.
What gave you the audacity almost to know that the sacrifice would end up being worth it?
Well, I don't know that I ever knew it was going to be worth it. I just knew that if I didn't chase it, I'd be upset and I'd be frustrated. And it, probably the support from my wife, never question. I don't know if there's a lot of wives out there that, we get to Arizona State, our car breaks down, so I start riding a bike. We have 3 kids now, figured out what caused that, stopped doing that, right? And, we just always kind of said, chase the dream and let's see where it takes us. And it just all worked out. It all played out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Sophia seems like a pretty consistent character in this story of you. We actually have something for you, a gift, and then I want you to tell me the significance of what this gift is. Drum roll, please.
Oh my gosh. Wow. A little blooming onion. I love it.
I mean,
yeah.
What is
a lot of calories right here?
A lot of calories.
A lot of calories, but this is where we met. Sophia and I met at Outback Steakhouse. Mm-hmm. So for her 18th birthday, I was her server. You get a discount as an Outback employee. Mm-hmm. So I think it was like 50% at that time.
Okay.
And I liked her. I don't think she liked me, but I liked her. So I was her server. She had her friends there at the table, and she worked there as well. But I took care of the meal that night. I was trying to kind of lay the groundwork. Mm-hmm. And we kind of fell in love from there. But she was a to-go girl. Mm-hmm. When I first got to Outback, our quarterback at William Jewell started working there, Benny Palmer. Mm-hmm. He's like, hey, it's a great place to work. And you have to, it wasn't NIL, especially for William Jewell. It just didn't exist. So you had to figure out how you're going to pay your bills. So you worked there during the weekend, and it grew into a great relationship for us.
But Sophia herself, you talk about her being like, go after your dreams, whatever.
Yeah.
What has she meant to you on this ride that is college coaching?
Yeah, I can't put it into words. I mean, like I said, I don't know anybody that would be willing to take this journey like she was, for me, and honestly never questioned it, never asked, how are we going to make it? She just always trusted it was going to work out. And both of us is probably a little bit of, foolish ambition. But she was just always along for the ride, and had to put her career on hold. She was a marketing major that had some success. When we went to Sam Houston State, she worked at H&R Block a little bit. She did some different jobs, but she just always trusted the process.
Mm-hmm. Take me to the day that you guys find out, or she's diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah, so I'm actually. Her knee had been bothering her for some time, and I was the guy that was like, pop an Advil, you're fine. We'd gone to the doctor. Doctor said, oh, we think it's just some like tendonitis in your knee, you're gonna be fine. So we end up leaving for a coach's retreat at Memphis, and we're with the coaches, and she calls me, she goes, I'm going to, ER or going to like urgent care because I gotta get this checked out. I'm like, yeah, go ahead. And then she calls me back and they're like, they think it's cancer, they wanna operate right away. And I just remember falling on my knees, being like completely caught off guard. I mean, it was a definite reset in my career. And I was with the perfect coach, Mike Norvell. His wife, Maria, were unbelievable during that process. He wouldn't let me come to work. I wanted to come to work. He wouldn't let me come to work. Made me stay home with Sophia and the boys. And we had a lot of friends and family that really just dived in. Football family, true family that dived in and made that transition as hard as it was, really as seamless as it could be, but you see a really powerful girl that you love, and you see her wilting away. She got down to like 105 pounds during chemotherapy. She lost all of her hair. She didn't feel pretty anymore. She had a massive surgery on her knee and had it replaced, and it was an eye-opening moment, and really eye-opening watching your boys. They're young at the time, and knowing something's wrong, but not knowing why, and hearing them pray every night that mommy gets out, this mommy's not sick anymore. It just was a real reset for us.
Mm-hmm. For someone who's a coach that's in charge of like fixing things, like seeing an issue and fixing it, to being in a situation that you can't fix.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Yeah, and lack of control, right? There's a real lack of control there, and it challenges your faith, but it was probably, one of the best things that could happen to me in my career and our family, just for that reset, for that experience.
Mm-hmm. What was the official diagnosis?
Osteosarcoma. It's usually a childhood cancer, but she was, a little bit older. I think she was 28 or 29 at the time whenever she had it, and it just went from like nothing to something really quick. Her knee blew up, huge tumor. And again, it's more evasive than having a knee replacement surgery. So it's the kind of thing where the doctor says, don't Google it. So immediately you Google it and you're like, oh my gosh, there's a great chance that it doesn't. But again, right place, right time. We're right there by St. Jude's Medical Center in Memphis. We're able to work with, a couple of the hospitals there in town, and they did unbelievable care. But I remember spending Valentine's Day in the hospital with my wife, and I remember, hey, do you think we can light a candle in here? And like, no, probably not, but we did it anyway. It was, a unique experience that really made us a lot closer.
What was the prognosis from the beginning?
It wasn't positive, but they were aggressive right away. They went in, they did surgery, they went right into chemo, but it was kind of a July all the way through almost May, June, before that process was kind of knocked out. And now she's, 7 years cancer-free, kicking butt, doing awesome. I mean, maybe 8 years now.
I've actually seen it, but you have a tattoo of her.
I do.
Describe the impetus or what made you go and get it.
Well, I'm kind of like, I kind of fly by the seat of my pants sometimes, and I'd always told I like tattoos. I've had a couple, but this one, I always told her I love it when girls have tattoos, and she doesn't have any. It's like, I'm gonna get a version of you, tattooed, and that it's gonna tell our story, where we've been, what we've experienced. So I don't think she believed me until I came home and I had the tattoo. She's like, "What did you do? Is this a joke?" And it's like, no, it's not a joke. I didn't realize it was ever gonna be out there for public consumption, but it happens.
Okay, now I'm gonna walk you through all your different stops.
Okay.
And top of your head, like maybe the headline, or what's the thing that you really feel like you learned at that stop, starting with Pitt?
Yeah, shut up, you don't know anything, right? Like, I thought I knew football as a high school coach, and you get there and you realize, wow, there's so much more to this game, so much more to an organization. Like, close your mouth, use your 2 ears, right, and start learning quick,
Arizona State.
Work ethic, I think, creating a confidence in yourself, right? There's stuff that you can accomplish and really be a part of. I think I also learned the value as a coach. I've told a lot of people that nobody's going to hire you as a young coach for what you know. They're going to hire you for the value you can add to the organization. So the importance of recruiting, I started trying to sign guys. Even though I didn't leave campus, I was working the phones and sending letters and really made my family a part of that, But yeah, recruiting.
Sam Houston State.
Well, this is my first time to actually have my own room, right, and kind of get my feet wet. So what's your teaching progression in front of the room? How are you going to coach a position? How do you, when you're accountable for a position, it's yours, and it doesn't go right, you got to figure out how to solve problems. So, yeah, more than anything, coaching a position, and then relationships. I thought I got challenged in developing relationships with the players, knowing that not everybody responds to things the same way.
Alabama.
This is where I feel like I got my doctorate in football, right? I got to be around some of the greatest minds. I learned the importance of quality control, going back and evaluating everything. We'd sit there and talk about a walkthrough, and then how can we make that walkthrough better? How we travel to a game, how we would travel different the next time. I thought Coach Saban was unbelievable at attacking the details. Everything matters, but the coaches I got to be around, I remember being on that staff and saying, man, there's not a bad coach here. And up until that point in my career, there was kind of always the guy that I could point at and be like, okay, if he can do it, I can do this. I'm going to make it, right? But we didn't have that. It was a really good staff. I learned the importance of organization there.
So then the next stop is Memphis.
Next stop's Memphis. I'd say a sense of pride. This is like my first, Division I job. I was really grateful for Mike giving me that opportunity, and it really felt like family. We went through some unique situations, obviously, with my wife when we got to Memphis. So, having people we could really lean on is the kind of place where I enjoy going to work every single day. Felt challenged. We had a really fiery staff, young staff, and we're able to win some games with players that love to be coached. A lot of the players that were playing at Memphis at the time, they were a guy that maybe just fell short of being in an SEC program. So I wouldn't say it was somebody else's leftovers, but it was maybe somebody else's second pick, and they became our first pick, and we coached them really hard and got to see guys really change and develop.
Georgia.
Yeah, I just feel like, Coach Smart is one of the most intelligent people I've ever been around. The way he looked at the game, I learned more working with Kirby and how he changed and adapted. The importance of recruiting and developing a roster, adapting as the game changes, having new answers, looking for answers, not just waiting for him to show up, but looking for answers. And then challenging yourself to be the best version of you every single day. It was 4th and 1 every single day you stepped in that office, and I appreciate that now, the intensity that was around it.
So when you're at Georgia, you're on a national championship winning team. You're coaching or coordinating one of the best defenses really we've ever seen in college football. You're 35 years old, and suddenly your name is getting attached to head coaching jobs. What was that time frame like for you?
Well, really, at the time, we had just came off a loss against Alabama in the SEC championship, so I was really humbled. We played really good defense all year, and then we got in that game and played really poor and didn't do very well. So I was really more concerned about how do we get better, at Georgia, and I really wasn't thinking about the next job or whatever else was there. And this kind of popped up, and it almost felt like, okay, this is surreal because I'm not going to have the opportunity to get that job based on how we just performed. And it all kind of fell into place, but the one thing I wish I could have taken the time to do is go back and reflect at how special that group was. I mean, we had a lot of guys to go on, and before the season started, I think we had one guy that was named all-conference team preseason. And it just shows you that people have no idea what reality is. We ended up having 5 guys on defense drafted in the first round. We had multiple all-conference players, all-American players, had a Buckus Award winner. And historically one of the best defenses in college football history, at least certainly in the modern era. And I learned a ton. It was an unbelievable experience. I got to work with great coaches. I was like a small piece in that cog. Like we had, Glenn Schumann, Will Muschamp, Trey Scott. I mean, there was a bunch of guys on that staff that made it so special, and the players made it really, really special.
What was it like when you first realized you get the call, hey, we're taking you, you're going to be the head coach at Oregon? Just like relive that moment, but out loud for us.
Yeah, just surreal. I remember, one of my early conversations was with Phil Knight, and I'm sitting there in the kitchen, I'm talking to Phil, and I hang up the phone, and my oldest son, Caden, he had to be probably 11 or 12 at the time. He said, "Was that Phil Knight?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "The guy from the book," because I'd always listen to audiobooks when we go on vacation. So we had listened to the book Shoe Dog. I was like, "Yeah, the guy from the book." The guy, he thought that was so cool that I was talking to Phil Knight. But every piece of it felt surreal. I'd never been to Oregon until I got off the plane here as the head coach. So it felt like something that, okay, that's an awesome job. I don't know if I'll ever get the opportunity to actually have that job, but let's go through the experience and see how it plays out. And it's been extremely rewarding.
That's an extraordinary story to tell. The first time you come to Oregon.
Yeah, it's the first time I was here. You get off the plane, it's the first time I'd ever been here.
What was your reaction?
Yeah, I fell in love right away. And the things that make Oregon so different and so special, like a great example of that, we before we step off the plane, they get on the plane and they share some of the gear that Oregon's created in the past to commemorate and honor the people that have suffered from cancer. So they immediately take that to my wife. And that's something that'll always stick out to me. And they said, "Hey, we want to do a collaboration with you, for the future and what we can do, to create another opportunity for, cancer patients." So there's just so many things that you remember about this place that make it so unique. I think everybody thinks about the stuff and the things that we have here, and we have unbelievable stuff, but the people here make it really special.
I want to talk about some of the things that you use maybe to motivate your team, or just things that I've heard you say and describe what they mean. So like having a safe at the front of the team room.
Yeah. We talk about sacrifice in our program. It's one of our pillars. And I always think, people want to accomplish goals, and people know you got to put things aside to accomplish goals. But when I talk to our players about that, to accomplish a goal, it has to be valuable what you're willing to give up. So why is it a safe, right? You can't just sacrifice something that's easy to give up. You got to sacrifice time. You got to sacrifice relationships. Somebody asked me the other day, like, how do you find work-life balance in football? And the reality is you don't. Not if you want to be great. Right, but you can be intentional with your time. So we challenge our players to do the same. Like if you want to be great, it looks different. Kobe worked a little harder than everybody else, right? These guys, Tom Brady worked a little bit harder than everybody else. If you want to be the best, then you got to be willing to do something they won't do.
About red light, green light.
Yeah, just control what you can control, right? Like there's so many things that are outside, your world of control. The first time I ever heard that was from a guy named Chris Ball that I worked with at Arizona State and Memphis, and it really stuck with me. So often we spend our time worrying about the things that we don't affect, right? But if you focus on the things that you can control, right? Your attitude, your demeanor, your body language, right? And you stop worrying about things you can't, the officials, the weather, what somebody else is doing, right? And then you can really, start to drive the train.
Let's talk about your philosophy, because we kind of have seen the coaching tree, and you've been under Saban and Kirby and Mike Norvell and all these guys. But what is the Dan Lanning philosophy, and when you took over at Oregon, did you want to implement?
Well, I think I stole something kind of from every one of those programs, but I think the piece that I've probably recognized early on in my career is I've seen a lot of coaches become a head coach, and then all of a sudden they try to be somebody else or emulate somebody else. And for me, it's always, hey, you got to do this your way. You got to do it and keep your temperament. You always hear of assistant coaches when the locker room changes, like, man, this guy changed when he became a head coach, right? And I didn't want that. But on the same note, you got to be willing to have confrontation. I learned that, from some great head coaches. Like, you got to be willing to point out when things aren't right, when they don't look the way they're supposed to look. And I learned that from Kirby. I learned that from Nick. I learned that from Mike. But the organization behind it, a lot of that footprint comes from Coach Saban. The adaptations that we've taken off of that certainly come from Coach Smart, and how we've changed drills and how we've changed what we do. And then I hope you continue to see us adapt and change from even what it was there at Georgia or at Alabama or Memphis.
You've talked about this roster is the most talented maybe that you've had since you've been here at Oregon. Just describe that growth that you've been on and what you've been looking for, you know what I mean, to establish the roster that you want here.
Well, I don't think it's a secret. Like when you win championships, those teams are really talented. I was just talking about our team at Georgia and how many guys that we ended up having drafted from that team, right? You look at Michigan this year, they'll probably have more players drafted at Michigan than any other team. They won a national championship. So talent, it's important to have talent to have success, right? But I also can think of a lot of talented teams in my career, not just in football, that weren't good football teams because they weren't a team. So the challenge isn't just having talent, right? It's having talent and then creating that team atmosphere.
You've talked about the job's not finished.
Right.
I love that. When would the job be finished?
I don't know if it'll ever be.
Yeah, what does a finished job look like?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it'll ever be. Because part of being great is never being satisfied, right? So, there's certain goals and aspirations we have here, but if you achieve that goal, to me, it's time to set a new goal. It's time to set a new bar. So, if I ever feel like the job's finished, it probably means I need to stop coaching.
So even the national championship, you'd be like multiple national championships.
Yeah, just what's next, right? I mean, that's. The goal is you have goals that are right in front of you, and you got short-term and long-term goals. But to me, if you're a motivated person, you're not satisfied with just achieving one goal.
Well, it's interesting because now you add in like a new aspect of everything, and it's the Big Ten. Welcome to the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So things change a little bit,
Right.
and travel changes, and scouting changes. What does that look like for you as the head coach at Oregon?
Yeah, I think winning football is still winning football, regardless of conference. But I'm really excited about being associated with the Big Ten. You look at some of the great teams that play in this league. It's going to be a challenge every single week, which I think you appreciate. When you coach, you want to coach against the best. So I'm really excited about that. But what wins games, I don't think that changes, based on what conference you're in. You got to be strong at the line of scrimmage. You got to be tougher than the opponent, right? You got to be able to win critical situations. So all those things are really still the same. What we think defines a good football team, like, that hasn't changed based on the change in conference, but the challenge, certainly increased.
I got to ask you about your three boys,
Yeah.
and kind of almost their interests. Like, do they want to be like dad? Do they write their goals on the mirrors? Like, how do you coach them up or father them at home?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember when Caden was first born, I talked to Sophia and I said, look, football is going to be a reward. Like, they can't play football unless they take care of their business in the classroom and they're good. They handle themselves right with people around them and they're kind and they work hard. And I remember Caden was born and then Niles was born and they're getting older and older. And I'm like, all right, when are they going to ask me to play football? And they never ask. Then my youngest was born, Titan, and I was like, I don't care if he's a turd. Like, we're playing, he wants to play. Dad, I want to play tackle football. He plays. But I learned to appreciate how different my kids are. It's funny you can raise your kids the same, you feel like, and they all have different experiences, but they've become, some of the most wonderful boys, and they all have different interests. Caden's in the band, he plays tennis, he's really savvy. Niles is one of the most creative minds I've ever been around. The other day I get an email from one of his teachers and says, hey, we'd like to turn in this story that Niles wrote to a competition. And I open the story and it's 22 pages, single spaced. I'm like, you wrote this story? I mean, it's an unbelievable story. But he's really creative and goes above and beyond. And Titan's probably my twin. He runs around a little bit like me. He's doing every sport. He plays football, he plays basketball, he's doing soccer right now. He's going to do track. But they're all so different and they're all so fun. I've got unbelievable boys.
So of the three, one is like kind of interested in football.
Yeah, I got one that's interested and likes it. Like Niles, when we have games here at Autzen, he'll bring a book to the game. He's reading a book in the game. He'll tell me after the game, good job, Dad. But it's not his forte. And I've honestly, kind of grown to appreciate what they're interested in. It's kind of made me expand my interest a little bit.
And the last thing that's kind of like off topic, but apparently you've been an actor in plays before. Is that?
I didn't know anybody knew that. This stuff follows you, doesn't it?
Yeah, Little Shop of Horrors?
Yeah.
What was your role?
I was the dentist in Little Shop of Horrors.
Okay.
Yeah, I was the dentist. It was fun. It was different.
You had to sing?
I got to sing a little bit. Yeah, I had to sing a little bit. I was in choir for some time in high school for a little bit too. So yeah, I did it all. I mean, I've had a lot of different interests, and luckily I had some parents that supported me to do whatever we wanted to do.
Another thing that I heard is that you can rap.
I don't know if that's
You
true.
can freestyle?
No, I don't know if that's true. I mean, we've had a lot of fun. On those long bus rides when you're in the MRVC conference at Richmond, we would have our rap battles in the back of the bus for sure.
Did you win?
I had some success. Yeah, I had a little bit of success.
Flash forward to you like being in the box with Travis Scott. Are you like, Should we freestyle?
No. He's on another level, right? He's on an absolute another level. But what I enjoy about those moments, getting to be in a box with Travis or Michael Jordan or Derek Jeter, is like I still don't feel like I even belong remotely close to the box. So it's still like a who's who, like holy moly moment for me. And just really enjoy, those are the things that are kind of like unique surprises about this profession.
Did you get to have a conversation with MJ?
Yeah, we visited a little bit. I told him we were recruiting a D lineman from Carolina, and he said, "Hey man, leave that guy alone. Let him stay home." But we ended up getting him. So big fan of Michael. He's certainly the GOAT in my book.
You're the only one that's ever beat MJ in anything. You got the kid to leave
Yeah,
Carolina.
I don't know if MJ was involved in that recruitment. I don't know if we win, right? But yeah, it was fun for sure.
Last but not least, what does the kid from Richmond, Missouri say about the man that's sitting in front of me today?
Not done yet. Not done yet. Got a lot more work to do, a lot more people to influence, and you can do a lot better job yourself.
Let's go back to the cross-country story and driving the 13 hours and you said you had to do it because you didn't want to have regrets.
Yeah.
Is that something that you tell your boys or impress upon them, this idea of having no regrets in life?
I definitely impress upon them that it doesn't happen on accident and it takes hard work. Like sometimes Sophia and I'll be visiting and Titan just came home the other day with a good report card. And I remember Sophia saying, "Oh, he's so smart." And I said, "No, he's not so smart. He worked really hard to get that, right? It's about the hard work that took place for those A's to show up." So I think that everything's within your grasp and your reach if you're willing to work hard enough. And that's the part I try to impress upon our kids.
What would you say is your most important or best role that you've played as an actor? Captain Underpants, the Cat in the Hat, or the dentist from The Little Shop of Horrors?
Oh gosh, none of them. I would say none of those are a highlight. But when I was an elementary PE teacher, one of the cool pieces of being the it was me and Tom. We were the only males, and Dr. Archer. We were the only 3 males in the building, right? Because it's an elementary PE or an elementary school. So getting to do some of those roles, whether it's Cat in the Hat for Read Across America Week or Captain Underpants, as crazy as that sounds, like those were fun, to be able to recreate some moments for kids.
You better hope we don't find the footage.
I'm hoping there's no evidence of that.